what are you say that a mark of a revival, but what happens before revival? I know it's something that God makes, we can't make, but what were these men doing at that time, like, you know?
Well, in America, there's 2 or 3 components. And one of them's pretty negative, a couple of them are pretty negative, but it's come a real positive.
Okay.
My theology of revival and sovereignty of God. God moves and stirs up people. The people respond and it moves God.
Okay.
And so God moves on them. So it really starts with him. He sets them to praying. When you see more and more people praying, you know revival's not far. It's not long before the revival breaks out.
Nice.
The early sign of revival is normal believers get a hunger for prayer in an unusual way. And I don't mean hours a day. I mean, maybe that one lady or that one guy, but churches start thinking, you know what? We got to do more than we've done before. That hunger hits cities and regions. Not everybody, but that hunger is the first signs. That's like the birth pangs of a baby.
Okay.
When that starts happening, and by the way, across the earth right now, prayer ministries are growing. Many, many churches, I mean, I'm talking hundreds of thousands that did not have prayer meetings 10 years ago are starting them now in the last 10 years. That's
okay.
God moves on people, then they cry out and they move God's heart, then his hand intervenes. So he doesn't just break in until he hears, but they don't really cry out till he moves on them.
Yeah. So this,
and we don't, and someone goes, how do we know if God moved on him? People are hungry for prayer. Where do you think that came from? Not from the flesh and not from the devil. Where do you think that came from? That was the Lord stirring your heart. You don't even know it was the Lord stirring you. Man, I just got to pray more. Like, who gave you that idea? Millions are saying that in the last 10 years. Because, doing IHOP, we have so many prayer leaders visit, and they're going, I mean, you don't have to do 24/7 prayer in a building.
Yeah.
Forget that. I mean, if God makes you do it. But we want 24 prayer in cities, with hundreds of ministries working together, not in one building. But we have many prayer leaders coming and pastors, and they're saying in the last 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. I mean, Africa, Asia, Europe, everywhere, Latin America, everywhere, South America, the islands, people are giving testimonies. We're having prayer meetings like we've never had 5 and 10 years ago.
Good.
Not millions of them. I mean, millions of groups are doing it. Maybe hundreds of thousands is more accurate. But that's exciting.
That's so exciting.
But the other sides of prayer is the culture gets wicked. Revival almost breaks out, not 100%, when sin grows in the culture. It's remarkable because the Great Awakening in America and even in England, they happened the same time. There was so much wickedness in the culture, but the wickedness is part of what wakes up the church. The pain of the sin, they go, ugh, and part of it's God's sovereignty, but part of it they just go, I can't deal with this anymore. We got an answer, so it makes desperation. So when wickedness grows in a culture, people pray more because God moves and because the wickedness gives them a burden.
Okay.
Those are 2 things that happen, but here's the negative. That's negative wickedness, of course. But the 2 negative things in America is that after the first Great Awakening was the Revolutionary War, a war break out right afterwards. And after the second Great Awakening, the Civil War broke out. The 2 Great Awakenings were both followed by the 2 big wars on Americans' culture, on American land. And I'm not making a theology out of that, but it's a well-known, many point that out.
Okay.
Because the Lord was moving on many to get saved even before the conflict came. And I mean, we don't know how far that goes, but that's just interesting.
Interesting. Very interesting.